You never think it will happen to you. Friends go through the pain of divorce for one reason or another, but because you trust and love your partner, you never believe you will become another statistic, another failed marriage. But when you look at divorce statistics, especially nowadays, you wonder why people get married at all. The song Till Death Do Us Part sounds hollow, its meaning lost over the decades. I probably should have noticed the signs, but not from what I read on the internet, whether it was stories, articles, or just more careful observation. When you're in love, you tend to see the world through rose-tinted glasses. When you're married, you have children, a home, and a life together. The thought of growing old together becomes unpleasant. But apparently the signs were there and I saw them before. I grew up in a family that was eventually labeled broken. As a child, my parents' marriage seemed strong. They seemed to love and respect each other. My father worked hard. Physically demanding work took a lot out of him. But he loved his wife and family and sacrificed himself for what could probably be called the greater good. My mother returned to work as soon as my younger sister started school. As children, we didn't understand what was going on, but looking back, I soon noticed some signs and then understood everything. She didn't start an affair right away. When it began, I was a teenager, my brother was a year and a half younger, and my younger sister was 3 years younger. It started like many affairs do. At first, she started staying late at work. Then there were business trips. She would take a shower as soon as she came home after spending the day with her lover. She dressed much better than she ever did for our father. And since this was before smartphones, there were secret phone calls and my mother disappearing at inconvenient times for her lovers. My father only found out about their affair because he caught them together. I later learned that he had finished work early, hoping to surprise my mother by asking her out on a date, but she said she was taking the afternoon off to get her hair done and go shopping. Instead, he came home and found her car in the driveway and next to it, a car that he admitted he recognized. He parked on the street and went home, entering through the back door. When he entered the bedroom, he found his wife, my mother, in the company of his boss, in their marital bed. My father lost his temper and hit him. His name was Jim Thompson, and he eventually made his way out of our house with bruises. My father quickly realized that infidelity meant nothing in a country where no-fault divorce was the norm. Some people say that possession is 9/10 of the law. My father tried to kick her out of the house, pack her things, and send her to my parents. When they found out what she had done, they wanted nothing to do with her. Her sister also refused to take her in. Since the house was in her name and my father's, she refused to move out. My father was caught between a rock and a hard place. If he stayed, divorce would be impossible. A husband and wife must live separately for 12 months, i.e., live in different places, before a divorce can be granted. My father tried several times to evict my mother because of her infidelity, but it was not a crime, and she had every right to stay in the house. Yes, sometimes no-fault divorces are bad because in cases of infidelity there is a guilty party who caused the divorce, and the fact that they can leave the marriage without being punished for breaking their vows seems a little unfair. In the end, my father gave up, not wanting to stay in the same house with his cheating wife. He found a flat and moved out. He couldn't find a place big enough for all three of us, so we stayed with my mother. I figured out what was going on and immediately let my mother know how I felt about her. She tried to explain her motives, but I told her that as soon as I could, I would move in with my father. My younger brother and sister weren't told anything, so they just wondered why their father had left. I tried to explain everything to them without getting into an argument. The only good thing my mother did that year was that she made sure we continued to see our father. For the first couple of months, he was devastated. He tried his best to look happy in front of us, but even we could see that his smile was forced. Being the oldest, one evening when my brother and sister had gone to bed, he sat me down at the table and confessed that we were the only reason he had stayed, but that he would fight for custody and try to find a home if possible. However, it was a pipe dream. In those days, men were rarely granted custody, and in the event of a divorce after 12 months of separation, they had to go to court to resolve custody and other issues. When I was old enough to appear in court, I stated emphatically that I wanted to live with my father. But since my brother and sister were too young to make that decision, and although the judge took their word for it, my mother was awarded custody of all three children. The only upside for my father was that there is no child support in Australia, although there is such a thing as spousal maintenance. However, it is not always awarded, and since our mother earned a good income anyway, he only had to pay reasonable maintenance. Unlike in the United States and Australia, maintenance is paid in a reasonable amount to the parent who no longer lives with the family, so my father would not have been left without a means of support because of the maintenance payments. The next 4 years were difficult. I already despised my mother and she knew it. Every man she tried to introduce to me as her new partner, I made it clear that my mother was a whore who had cheated on her husband and forced him to leave the family. More than once, I left her in tears. By the time I was 16, we hardly spoke, and I left home as often as possible, to go to school, to work, or just to get away. After the divorce, my father really got his life together and eventually met a beautiful woman named Naomi, who was also divorced. I supported their relationship, and she soon loved his 3 children as her own. She had a daughter, and we treated her like a sister. Despite the emotional pain, I was glad that my father had found love again, even though I knew he was reluctant to marry. Naomi seemed to understand this and happily agreed to live together. Eventually, they rented a house and began living as a married couple. As soon as I turned 18 and finished school, I left my father's house. It was very difficult for me to leave my brothers and sister. They were the only reason I had stayed in the house until then. But by that time, my relationship with my mother had become unbearable. I admit that my last words to her were incredibly cruel, but it was just an explosion of all the negative emotions I'd been holding back since my father was forced to leave the house simply because he didn't want to stay married to a fickle whore. Despite the breakdown of our relationship, she was still crying when I was packing the car on the day we left. I hugged my brother and sister, assuring them that I would be there for them and would never forget them. And then I looked at my mother one last time. My experience with my mother made me cautious in my relationships with women. I had read many articles about infidelity and knew that I was a monogamous person at heart and would expect the same from any partner. I had several girlfriends in school, but as soon as I started working and earning money, I began dating girls, hoping to find a woman worthy of my love and trust. I met Kylie when I was 21. She had just graduated from university. I was working as an engineer and taking evening classes because, although I enjoyed working with my hands, I hoped to work my way up to a management position in an organization. I met her at a corporate event representing an engineering company, and she was working part-time as a sales representative for a supplier. We liked each other immediately, and by the end of the day, I had her number in my phone with a promise to call her. "Hot date, Mark?" asked my roommate. He was one of my best friends in school, and we had agreed to live together to save on rent and bills. "Something like that, Dave. Is that the girl you met at the conference?" "Yes." "Did you finally work up the courage to call her?" I looked at him and grinned. "Give me a break, Dave. I just waited a couple of days so I wouldn't seem too pushy. Trust me, she was really happy when I called her and wanted to meet up as soon as possible. I put on some aftershave and decided I looked okay. At least better than a bum. I had a decent job, money wasn't a problem, and I felt pretty comfortable. We agreed to meet at one of the bars in the city center, and then it was up to fate. I didn't usually organize dinner and drinks on first dates. There are too many stories about women looking for a free meal, and the man who paid for it never hears from them again. When I parked the car and entered the bar, she was sitting at a table. She was already sipping her drink and caught my eye across the room. When her eyes lit up and she smiled, my heart started beating faster. Over a couple of drinks, we gradually got to know each other. She confessed that her job at the corporation was temporary and that she had been hired solely because of her pretty face, which attracted men. She laughed as she admitted that it was true, but that it made her feel like a piece of meat. "And so many married men hit on me," she added. "It's disgusting." I understood what she was getting at. I know that my own mother cheated, but when it comes to cheating, both sexes are equally bad. Out of curiosity, I looked up the statistics online, and the fact that so many men and women admitted to extramarital affairs shocked me. To make matters worse, according to many articles written in Australia, we were known as a nation of cheaters. "You were the perfect gentleman, Mark," she added, taking my hand. "You looked me in the eyes the whole time and acted completely professional. At least until you asked for my number. You were the only sincere person I've ever met. It's a shame you're not married." I put my hand on my heart and raised my other hand. "I swear I'm not married. Ask any of my friends." She smiled and took my hand again. "Good, because I have a good feeling about you. I've had my heart broken before." We decided not to rush things. For the first 2 weeks, we met for coffee or cocktails. At the end of the third evening, over cocktails, we kissed. By then, she already knew about my parents' relationship. She hugged me tightly, and for some reason I felt relieved. When we kissed, I knew immediately that I had done the right thing. When I met her gaze, I felt that she was thinking the same thing. The drinks turned into dinner. A week later, she came back to the flat I shared with Dave. He had a girlfriend and spent most of his time with her, so luckily he wasn't home. After the last drink, I took her hand and we made love for the first time. A month later, she confessed her love for me. I reciprocated, and everything fell into place. As soon as she found a steady job, we started talking about serious things like moving in together, buying a house, getting married, and then having children. By this point, despite thinking about what had happened to my father, Kylie had won my heart, and that was all that mattered. I enjoyed spending time with her, and she confessed that she wanted nothing more than to be a wife and mother. Before the wedding, we agreed to buy a house together. Fortunately, this was before the housing boom that swept Australia, especially Sydney. However, due to a lack of work and a poor credit history, which she told me about, she couldn't take out a joint mortgage. I couldn't afford the mortgage on my own, and no bank would have offered it to me, so my father offered to be a co-signer, supplementing my income with his salary. I had no idea how this would save me in the future, but at the time, Kylie was very grateful to him and almost cried when he told her she was like a daughter to him. At the same time, her parents simply adored me, so when I proposed to her just 3 months after we moved into our new home, everyone was thrilled when we announced our engagement and wedding date. Marrying Kylie was the best day of my life at that point. I was marrying the woman I considered my soulmate, and she often told me that I was hers. As I walked down the aisle towards her, I must have been smiling like a fool. She started giggling when I took her hand, and we were both happy to finally be tied together in marriage. It wasn't a church wedding, but a wedding in a park with a tent for the reception. Our honeymoon lasted a week on one of the islands in the Pacific Ocean. Sun, sea, sand. It was no surprise that it was then that we found out she was pregnant with our first child. 9 months after our honeymoon, she gave birth to a beautiful girl, and 6 months after giving birth, she was ready to have another child. A year and a half later, she gave birth to our son. 3 months later, we decided that two was enough. We both got what we wanted. To my surprise, she didn't want to have surgery in case we changed our minds, and she didn't want to have her tubes tied. She simply agreed to go back on birth control as it hadn't bothered her before, and life went on as usual. She was a housewife and mother until both children started school. As soon as our son started school, she went back to work, but didn't take any time off until both children were in secondary school. Only then did she return to full-time work. By the time we were both 45, I was working as a regional manager for a national network of engineering companies. I traveled a lot, but rarely stayed away from home for more than one night. Kylie had a career in real estate and ran her own office, although she sometimes traveled to the head office in the central business district. Our daughter Charlotte had left home to live with her boyfriend. He was a nice young man who was already very fond of her. I thought a wedding was just around the corner. Our son Stephen was still at university and lived in a flat near the campus. I knew about his various interests, but Kylie and I supported him regardless of his life choices. By that time, we had been married for over 20 years. I felt that we still loved each other as much as we did on the day we exchanged vows. I couldn't take my eyes off him. Hand on heart, I could look at another woman, but there wasn't a thought in my head because I had given my heart to Kylie and didn't want to break that trust. But I couldn't help myself. I always thought about what happened to my father. I should have known. I should have noticed the signs. But when I finally realized the truth, I knew I had to take certain steps to prepare for the inevitable. You just never think it will happen to you. "Do you think she's cheating on you?" Dave asked, hearing the surprise in his voice. "Mate, she loves you to death. Why would she do that?" I was blind, Dave. I thought that once Steve left the house, our relationship would go back to the way it was. But I'm starting to notice that she's acting the same way my mother acted towards my father. Just the thought of that bitch made my blood boil. I had hardly seen her in the last 20 years. She was at my wedding, but only because my father intervened. By then, he had married Naomi and long since retired. He advised me to be the better man and invite her. I didn't have to invite her, but if I didn't, I would have looked like a jerk. I gritted my teeth and sent her an invitation. Apart from correspondence about her grandchildren, whom she rarely visited, we had nothing in common. Kylie knew this and never insisted on maintaining any relationship with her. So what are you going to do? Gather all the evidence, and if she's cheating on me, just leave her. How are you going to do that? I have my ways and means. She's been acting more secretive than usual for the past few months. I should have noticed it sooner. It's my fault, but I got what I deserve for trusting her. By the time I realized what was going on, it was too late, and I prepared myself for the inevitable. On Monday morning, I have a meeting with a private investigator. I just want to know if she's been doing anything dirty. I don't need photos or videos, but anything that can help my case. It's a shame that in this damn country you can't get divorced on the grounds of marital infidelity. That's true, but a man can protect himself if he's smart and defends himself early enough. Fortunately, she waited until the children left home before she cheated on me. And there are one or two things she forgot in our life that could turn the situation in my favor. He patted me on the shoulder. I'm very sorry, mate. Really. I took a sip of beer. Me too. The thing is, until I have proof, I can't stop loving her. Maybe it's just my suspicious nature. Maybe I'm just a jealous bastard. But there are signs, mate. I didn't pay attention to them until I finally realized what was going on. The next morning, I drove to my father's house. Naomi greeted me as usual and asked if I could sit down with him while he explained the situation to me. I must have had a look on my face because, even though it was only 10 a.m., he slipped a bottle of beer into my hand and told me to take my time before he started. I smiled as he took Naomi's hand. They still loved each other as much as they did on their wedding day. Their relationship didn't last long before my father wanted her to be his wife. I think Kylie is having an affair, Naomi sighed. My father muttered, Damn, not again. On Monday, I'm hiring a private investigator, but the signs are all there, Dad. The same signs you told me about with Mum. All the signs you told me about. If she's cheating, she probably read a book on how to do it without getting caught. But as soon as I got my head out of my arse, and what do you want me to do? I smiled. Naomi giggled. I'm sure the smile wasn't very pleasant. Dad, I'm giving you my house. Remember when you signed the mortgage all those years ago? Kylie never put her name on the contract. Legally, you and I are the owners of the property, and when I'm gone, it will be considered nothing more than a rental. I'm selling you the house as a gift by simply removing my name from the contract. According to state and federal law, I can do this for free. What are we going to do? I'll sign a 1-month lease with you. When I dissolve our marriage, if it comes to that, you can work something out with Kylie. Although she will have some tenant rights since she has been living in the house for some time, we will discuss how you can legally evict her through the courts. Unfortunately, because of the plan I have in mind, I won't be around. Have you thought this through, Mark? Naomi asked. Kylie and I discussed monogamy and fidelity before we got married. She knows about my mother. I warned her that if she ever cheated on me, I would never forgive her. I don't care if it's once or 100 times. If you sleep with someone else, you're breaking our vows, and that means you're breaking our marriage contract. At least with this harmless thing, I can walk away easily, and I won't have to pay her a penny. No alimony since they don't live at home, and no spousal support since she makes as much as I do. Thank God we don't have those damn alimony laws like some states do. To hell with giving some fickle bitch part of my pay just because she can't keep her legs together. I took a sip of beer and looked at Naomi. Sorry, I got a little angry. I hope I'm wrong. When I got home, I found Kylie sitting in the living room, curled up on the sofa and watching a film. She smiled at me as always, and her eyes lit up when she saw me. Where have you been? She asked. I was meeting my father. I just needed some advice on something. About what? About work. I might have a new opportunity. The problem was that I only had suspicions, but no concrete evidence that she had done anything wrong. And if she was having an affair, it was with someone she didn't see every day. I knew that the day the girls' nights out suddenly started would be the last straw, but nothing like that had happened yet. Sometimes she was late for work, but that was enough for me. If she suspected anything, she would think I was cheating on her on the rare evenings when I stayed late at work. When she went to bed, she snuggled up to me as always and whispered how much she loved me. It hurt me to think she was lying to me. Maybe she loved me, but she needed something new or someone new. If so, we would get divorced and she would find herself a new boyfriend. I read made-up stories about wives who, for some reason, turned into huge sluts and did terrible things. The thought of my beautiful wife participating in such things made me want to vomit. Until I had proof, I had to trust her. It was an old saying, trust but verify. So when I whispered that I loved her, I was still sincere. But the thought that she might break our vows was sometimes unbearable. The next day was Monday. I went to work first. Every morning we had breakfast together, then I brushed my teeth. That day was exactly the same. Her eyes sparkled when she confessed her love for me and wished me a good day. I almost felt guilty knowing that at lunchtime a private detective would be standing in front of me, ready to start following my wife because I believed she was cheating on me after 20 years of what I considered a happy marriage. I was a little surprised when I saw the woman. I had expected to see a former police officer with a distaste for women, dressed in a tailcoat and a bowler hat. I probably watched too many old movies. She noticed my surprise and smiling, explained how the process would work, what she was offering, and how much it would cost. Will she notice that the money is being transferred? No, we have separate accounts, but we have a joint account that we use to pay bills and other household expenses. Why do you think she's having an affair? I told her what I had seen my mother doing, what my father had discovered, what my mother had confessed, and then explained the current situation. How are things in your intimate relationship? She finally asked. When my son left home, everything was fine. But about 6 months ago, things slowed down again. I thought we had just put it out of our minds. To be honest, um, I would have sex with my wife every night if I could. Just because I'm 45 doesn't mean I'm not interested in it anymore. Have you noticed any changes in her behavior? Yes, they're subtle, but they're there. Are you familiar with the term red flags? She nodded and I smiled. Not enough for a communist parade, but enough to make me feel uneasy and suspicious. She explained what they could offer. It included phone tapping, video surveillance, identity tracking, and all sorts of other activities, some of which, she admitted, might not stand up to scrutiny, i.e., would be considered somewhat illegal. I had to explain that this wasn't a permanent arrangement unless I wanted to bury my head in the sand. I had no idea if she was seeing someone during her lunch break, working late, or just doing it with someone else when she wanted some variety. I had to admit that I simply didn't know and wanted to find out the truth. They gave me some time to think about it and said I should call on Friday to start surveillance early the following week. It was difficult to give up sex with my wife. I still didn't know the truth, but the thought of now having to share her with one or more men caused me great anxiety. I could have pretended to be sick, but I told the truth. I just wasn't interested. I know she was upset when I rejected her advances. In the end, she asked if I was worried about work. I was preoccupied with something, so I guess that satisfied her curiosity. She snuggled up to me as usual and whispered that she loved me. On Wednesday, I called and asked them to start immediately. I needed to know because it was driving me crazy. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all a dream. No wonder so many spouses who are cheated on suffer psychological trauma. In the end, even though I paid for their services and they found proof, it took a month of fighting for my wife to finally show her true colors. By that time, I was reading books every day about unfaithful spouses, men and women, all the signs of infidelity, how they cheat on their partners, and what spouses can do when a marriage falls apart. I was ready. I had already started moving my things into the car and had prepared a so-called evacuation bag. The workers knew I was ready to move. I just had to give them a date. Our house now belonged to my father, and there was no mention of my wife in the lease. With any luck, she would be kicked out of the house in a couple of months. It was Friday evening. I came home at the usual time. When I entered the house, Kylie was usually sitting in the living room, watching television and sipping a glass of wine. We would usually order takeaway, discuss the past week, maybe make plans for the weekend, cuddle, and then go to the bedroom. Before she started acting differently, Friday nights were usually wonderful when the kids were finally out of the house. We made love all the time, sometimes almost nonstop until Sunday. But instead, I heard her fussing in the bathroom. I almost laughed. The situation was so absurd that I grabbed a beer from the kitchen and settled down on the sofa. You never think it could happen to you. I waited for her to emerge from the darkness. I expected to see a flirty black dress. Instead, she was wearing a colorful blouse, a short skirt, stockings, and high heels. She had done her hair and put on makeup, and her jewelry accentuated all her charms. She looked stunning. Too bad it wasn't for me. I didn't realize it right away. Oh, Mark, I didn't notice you were home. I came home at the usual time, Kylie. You were obviously too busy getting dressed up and ready for whatever you're up to. Where are you going? She took a deep breath. I have a date tonight, Mark. With John from work. Why? It's just work. That was a blatant lie. I knew who he was. He was her lover. He worked at our company's head office. He was married with children about our age. I don't know what she expected from me, but there comes a point when a man just washes his hands of you. If she expected me to beg or plead, she clearly didn't know me. She knew my stance on monogamy and fidelity. She stood up and met my gaze as I approached her. I stared at her intently and eventually she backed away. I smiled and headed for the kitchen. Aren't you going to say anything, Mark? No. She had no idea how prepared I was. I guess we were both good actors. The only difference was that I wasn't breaking her heart with lies. Okay, I get it. I'll be back later. We'll talk then. I didn't say anything, but followed her to the door. She stopped and looked back at me, looking more uncertain than I had ever seen her before. I didn't know if it was guilt, and I didn't care anymore. Good night, Mark, she said quietly. Goodbye, Kylie. She must have understood what I wanted to say, but apparently decided that I would be just like all the men she had read about, who put up with such things. But I wasn't a cuckold. I wasn't going to put up with that. I wasn't interested in open marriages, wife swapping, and all that. It's degrading, humiliating, and completely contrary to the marriage vows. As soon as she left, I started to put my plan into action. I took my escape bag and packed another suitcase, putting them in the car. I went online and thanked heaven that in this day and age, everything can be done through an app on your phone or online. We had very little debt, just a credit card, which I paid off and canceled immediately. I paid all our upcoming bills and then transferred most of our savings from our joint account to mine. I left her enough money to pay the rent and bills for a month or two. After that, she was on her own. Possession is 9/10 of the law. She didn't own the house, and by the time she realized that our savings were gone too, I'd be long gone. As I walked through the house for the last time, I couldn't help but sigh. So many good memories now destroyed. Grabbing another mug of beer, I decided I had 3 phone calls to make. The first would be easy. The last 2 would be difficult. Dad, it's confirmed. She's cheating on me. She had the nerve to admit that she was seeing another man tonight. The plan goes into effect immediately. Where are you going? Adelaide. I found a new job there for a year. Once the divorce is finalized, I'll probably come back to Sydney, but I haven't decided yet. We'll see. All right, son. I'll make sure she doesn't find out where you are. New number? I'll sort that out when I get there. I'll send you my new address as soon as I find somewhere to live. Drive carefully and don't do anything stupid. Dad, I'm just getting away from a cheating woman. Unfortunately, the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, rings a little hollow this time. You didn't do anything wrong, Mark. Just find peace in what you're doing, and soon you'll be able to move on. Know that Naomi and I love you. Do the kids know? I'll call them next time. Good luck, son. Talk to you soon. Calling the kids was the hardest thing I've ever done. I called my daughter first. She'll always be Daddy's little girl. When I explained the situation to her, she cried into the phone. That's what hardened my heart. Hearing my little girl cry because her dad broke her heart. I assured her that I would always love her, but that I was leaving now. I would email her all the new information as soon as I settled in, but I wouldn't tell anyone else anything yet. As for my son, he was showing the stoicism I would expect from any young man. He called his mother a whore, and the only question he asked me was what I was going to do with him. I'll find out where he lives and send it to his wife, I admitted. She has a right to know the truth. Besides, I don't want revenge, Steve. This isn't fiction. It's real life. My heart is broken right now, but I'll just wait for the divorce and then start my life over somehow. I'll be 45, 46 when the divorce is finalized. What about counseling? She might require that. Marriage isn't like it is back home, and neither are the divorce laws, Steve. You read too many stories based on the laws of other states. If we live apart for 12 months, I can file for divorce. Since you're both over 18, I won't even have to go to court, although I will, just to make sure everything goes smoothly. She can't demand counseling because we've been married for 20 years. Well, I'd be careful, Dad. You know how courts are. If she's persistent, then I'll just take my evidence to the counselor, show him the photos, and ask him if he'd stay married to a woman who cheats on him. All right, Dad. Take care and let me know when you get there. I'll keep you posted, as Mum will probably be in touch. She knows Lottie will defend you. Thanks, Steve. Talk to you soon. That was it. I wrote Kylie a short letter explaining that I was leaving and that she would hear from my father soon. I didn't give a reason, deciding to make it a surprise. I also explained that I had already called our children and told them the truth, just as my father had done. She could tell her parents that I had left, but if I started receiving insults or requests for reconciliation, I would send them proof. Finally, I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the coffee table, along with the note and all the evidence I had gathered. These were copies. I kept the originals just in case. As I got into the car, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I found that all the tension I had been feeling disappeared as soon as I drove away from home. I booked a hotel on the western outskirts of the city to prepare for my trip to Adelaide. I had 2 weeks to get there and get my life in order, so I took my time and decided to stay in random provincial towns where there was only a pub, a post office, and a police station, usually all in the same building. A week later, I arrived in Adelaide. At the office where I was supposed to work, I was greeted by several people I recognized from previous corporate conferences. They already knew who I was and what I did, so knowing that I was a stranger in their city, they took me outside, showed me around, and recommended areas where I could live. In the end, I stayed in a hotel for a month while I looked for a place to live. I finally chose a modern three-bedroom apartment in North Adelaide after doing some research and finding out that it was one of the most beautiful suburbs in the city. I didn't want to buy an apartment because the average price was high, although not as high as in Sydney. I intended to return home to Sydney after 12 months. As soon as I moved in and got settled, I told my father, brothers, sisters, and children about the changes in my life. Charlotte called right away and said she wanted to visit me. I missed her very much and arranged for her to fly over for a month. My son was finishing his studies, but with only 3 months left until Christmas, he decided to come for a few weeks. As for my father, he told me what was going on with Kylie. You know, she didn't come home until the next morning. Yes, I didn't bother the private investigators until the next day because I was curious to know what she had been doing that night. She went out to dinner with him and it was very romantic. Then they spent the night in a hotel in town. That was all I needed to know. I thanked them for their efforts and paid them, as I didn't need their services anymore. Well, I heard about it from rumors and also from what she told me. When she got home, she found your engagement ring, a note, and some evidence. She called me, your children, and her family in hysterics. You obviously didn't answer her calls, and I know she sent you emails. All her calls went to voicemail and were deleted. I marked all her emails as spam. Well, that was just the beginning of her problems. A week later, I showed up at her doorstep and showed her the lease we had signed. Then I showed her the documents in which you gave her the house as a gift. She turned pale when she realized that it was all completely legal. I gave her 3 months to find a suitable place to live, and if she doesn't leave, I'll call the police to have her evicted. She's still living there, but I know she wants to leave. Did she ask about me? Of course. She asked about your family, your children, your friends, even where you work. She's tormented by guilt for abandoning 20 years of our life together. Did she explain to anyone why? Not really. Of course she regrets it, but I heard the same thing from your mother. She regretted getting caught, not cheating on me. Cheaters always live in a fantasy world where they think they're not doing anything wrong. The usual nonsense about it being just sex. I never cheated on my wife just for sex, and believe me, Dad, by the time I was in my 30s and 40s, I had plenty of opportunities. But I loved my wife and wouldn't have dared break my vow. You had a second chance with Naomi, Mark. Give yourself time to heal, mourn your marriage, and when you're ready, open your heart to someone else. There are millions of good women in the world, Mark. Thanks, Dad. I love you, son. Take care of yourself. Work took up all my time. I traveled around South Australia visiting various shops and suppliers, and on weekends I set aside time to explore some areas, especially the Barossa Valley. I found that the divorce had made me a tough negotiator, unwilling to give an inch unless it was in my company's best interest. At least my bosses were happy with my work and were already talking to me about staying in Adelaide permanently. A month after I moved into the apartment, my daughter came to visit. As I waited for her at the airport, she screamed, "Daddy!" and ran towards me. I hugged her tightly, spun her around, and she immediately started crying, whispering how much she loved me and that when everything was over, I would come home for good. She spent a week with me, and although I was working, I spent most of my time at home, and whenever I had a free minute, we talked about everything that came to mind. She told me that her mother was bombarding her with phone calls, trying to explain her point of view. Although I didn't want to show her the evidence, I had a printed report which I eventually gave in and showed her. When she finished reading it, she was in tears and almost screaming about how much she hated her mother. That wasn't my intention, but despite my assurances that her mother still loved her, I had a bad feeling that it would take her a long time to forgive her mother, if she could ever do so. The day she left was painful for both of us because I knew she wanted to stay with me just to keep me company. I hugged her for what seemed like an eternity before she had to leave. During the months when my marriage was falling apart, I didn't shed a tear. I was angry but not upset. I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried for a few minutes in the car after my daughter left. I realized that I felt very lonely. But at the same time, her visit breathed new life into me. I talked to her every evening. My son called me at least once every few days. My brothers and sisters knew what had happened, and my younger sister promised to visit me as soon as she could. My father kept me informed of everything that was going on. Even the guys from my old office in Sydney seemed to be aware of some of what was going on, but they usually just called to chat and laugh. There were 6 weeks left until Christmas when the thunder struck again. I was wandering the aisles of the nearest supermarket, bored out of my mind. Kylie and I always went grocery shopping together. We laughed at each other, fooled around, and it was always a fun activity. I reached for a bottle of salad dressing, not noticing the woman reaching for the same bottle. Our hands collided, and we both turned and stared at each other. I'm sure my jaw dropped slightly and her cheeks immediately turned red. "I'm sorry," I said. "No, it's my fault. I didn't see you. Please take the bottle. I can get another one." "I can't take it. It's the last one." I don't know where I got the courage to say what I said next. "Let's do this. You take the bottle and then we'll go get a coffee." I had no idea who she was, what her name was, or what she did, but that touch sparked something in me. And the beauty of her face made me want to get to know her better. I held out my hand. "I'm Mark." She smiled, took my hand, and felt how soft it was. "I'm Jennifer." "Do you often chat up women in supermarkets, Mark?" "No, you're the first." "And you're sure I'm not married?" "If not, I'll withdraw my invitation. If so, I hope you'll accept." She was a brunette with hair almost down to her shoulders. Her bright blue eyes were protected by a pair of thin black glasses perched on a small nose. Her lips were full but natural, and her face was classically beautiful. I had no idea how old she was. I wanted to look her over from all angles, but I refrained, although I guess she was about a decade younger than me. I don't know what she thought of me, but judging by her smile, she liked what she saw. "I'd like to have a coffee. Give me your number." I gave her my number and she replied with a text message. "I'll be done shopping in about half an hour, then I have to take this home and wash it. But I can meet you in a couple of hours if you like." "Are you local?" "Yes. I live nearby. Are you?" "Me too. I don't like driving far to get groceries." "Tell me where you'll be and I'll come over." Pushing her trolley, she put her hand on my forearm. "See you soon, Mark. It's been a long time since I've been on a date in a cafe." I heard the tone of her voice and met her gaze. I saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain I saw in mine when I looked in the mirror. "I'll text you when I get home and let you know where I am." After finishing my shopping, I used the self-checkout and practically ran home, throwing everything in the fridge and cupboards, then took a shower and got changed. Before leaving, I sent Jennifer a message asking if she liked the coffee shop next door, which I had grown fond of since moving to the area. A couple of minutes later, she replied, admitting that she often went to the same place and asking if we had met before. I admit I was a little nervous as I waited for her to arrive. I had dated my wife during our marriage, but this was my first real date in 20 years. She walked in wearing an absolutely stunning summer dress. After buying her a drink, we started getting to know each other. She admitted that she was simply stunned by my courage in asking her out on a date in the middle of a busy supermarket. Then she added, "But when you touched my hand, Mark, I felt something, so it's not just me." She blushed but nodded. "No, I often read about things like that, but I think it's just fantasy." She held out her hand to me and we smiled as I took her palm. "I felt it again," she whispered. "I felt it too." We didn't get too deep into conversation as it was our first date. I remembered her name, she was lonely and smiled, showing me her left hand, although it was obvious that there had once been a ring on her third finger. She worked as a nursery school teacher, but she didn't have any children. She lived alone in a small flat and had a few close friends. Her parents lived in the city, she had a younger sister, and she was 35 years old. "Oh," I said, "I'm, 45? "I don't care how old you are, Mark. All I care about is what kind of person you are." When she said that, I felt compelled to admit that I had separated from my wife. Noticing her nervous expression, I sighed and asked if she would like another drink, as it would take some explaining. I didn't want to tell her everything on a first date, but if it was necessary, she made me smile when she said, "No, Mark, I believe you for now. I can see that you're hurting. Is it that obvious?" I saw the same expression in the mirror when he broke my heart. She took my hand again and squeezed it. It gets easier with time, but first you have to live one day at a time. Then weeks and months go by, and soon the person who broke your heart doesn't matter anymore. She smiled at me again. And then maybe you will meet the one who will heal your heart. Some people just have to wait longer than others, but it happens in the end. My father used to say the same thing. Your father is a wise man. We finished our second drink and went outside. Walking to her car, I felt awkward, not knowing whether to kiss her, hug her, or just wish her well. When I hugged her, part of me didn't want to let her go. I couldn't imagine ever finding someone else who would attract me so strongly and so quickly. I think we both didn't want to break the embrace. Call me this week, Mark. I'd like to talk to you some more. How about tonight? She giggled, and it was like a knife to my heart. Call me whenever you want. I called her that evening and every evening after that. Not wanting to disrupt her normal week as a teacher, I asked if she wanted to have dinner on Friday night. When she said yes, I practically danced around my flat as soon as I hung up the phone. I hadn't felt that excited in a long time. At a conference on Thursday, several people commented on my rather sunny disposition. Everyone knew about my breakup and impending divorce, so they immediately decided that I had someone new. Not wanting to jinx it, I said that I had enjoyed my date at the cafe and that I was going out to dinner with the same girl the following evening. I added that I wasn't interested in dating. I date one woman at a time. If it doesn't work out, I try another. The restaurant I chose had great reviews online, but I had never been there before. It was a restaurant with a casual atmosphere, but the food was supposed to be excellent. Despite the casual atmosphere, I still wore trousers instead of jeans, a long-sleeved button-down shirt, leather shoes, and a little cologne, although my stubble was kept to a minimum. There was a bar in the restaurant, and I smiled when I saw that Jennifer was already waiting for me there. She looked incredibly nervous. Noticing me approaching, she stood up, and without thinking, I leaned in to kiss her. She immediately responded to my kiss. "Wow," she whispered, pulling away from me. "If only you had greeted me like that on our second date." I wanted to do that at the end of our first date. The waiter approached us to show us to our table. Fortunately, we got a small semicircular booth where we could sit side by side. After ordering drinks, we started telling each other about our weeks. It was impossible not to notice how passionate she was about teaching. But when she admitted that she wanted to have children of her own, I started talking about mine. I think we were both annoyed when the waiter returned to ask about our order because it interrupted our conversation. We decided to share an appetizer and dessert and order separate main courses. I was surprised at how easy the conversation flowed. I was captivated by her face, her voice, her mannerisms. I'm sure she caught my eye several times and blushed every time. The food was excellent, no complaints. The waiters were attentive but not intrusive. I paid after dinner, although she suggested going to Holland's before I asked if she wanted another drink. She immediately agreed. I took her by the hand and led her to a bar I found on the internet. It was a quiet place, with a man playing background music on the piano. There were more booths here, and Jennifer enjoyed her cocktail while I had a bourbon and a mixer. "Something wrong, Mark?" she finally asked. I told her everything. About how we met, about our life together, about our children, about our careers. But then I explained what had happened to my father, how my relationship with my mother had broken down, about their divorce and what I had learned from it. Then I gradually realized that my wife was doing the same thing. So I confessed that I had left her, and that I had done so a few weeks before all this. I'm still married, Jennifer, but we live separately. I moved here to make the divorce go smoothly. I don't know if you consider that cheating. If you do, I won't blame you. But my marriage is over. It only exists on paper. I'm going back to Sydney to finalize the divorce. What if you meet someone here? Then I'd talk to him about our options. My children are in Sydney. Being so far away from them is hard. I turned away because his admission upset me. I miss them every day. My ex-husband wasn't an easy man, Mark. He swept me off my feet when I was 19. He was 25 at the time. The age difference didn't bother me, but My parents warned me about him, but I was in love and didn't listen to them. I ignored the warning signs that appeared after a couple of months. I was surprised that he let me go to work, but that was all I was allowed to do. Slowly but surely, he isolated me from my family and friends. I was expected to go to school and then come home and basically become his maid and whore. She paused, and I sensed that this was only the beginning of the story. I think it got worse. I talked to him in a disrespectful way, meaning I didn't respect my husband. I dressed like a whore or came home late, which meant I was cheating on him. I spent money on things I wanted, which meant I was financially irresponsible. He never said anything nice. He was an ocean of absolute negativity. I don't understand how anyone could say anything nice about you, Jennifer, I said quietly. I knew I had to leave. He was crazy, and I knew that one day he would either beat me half to death or just destroy me. I called my father and cried into the phone, begging him to save me. He came with two of my uncles and a few friends. My ex-husband tried to fight back, but pushing and hitting a woman is not the same as fighting a man. Or a man, for that matter, because my father knocked his watch off with one punch, and then they tied him to a chair while they helped me get away. I went straight to the police, got a restraining order, and an ERO against him. I've been divorced for 7 years, and he doesn't know where I am. I've hardly dated Mark. I was afraid for so long. She looked up and looked me in the eyes. And then I met you, and I felt feelings I hadn't felt in so long. I never felt them for him. She got behind the wheel, but it wasn't safe to drive, so I offered to take her home. Stopping in front of an apartment building, I realized I had looked at it before choosing my current place. Walking her inside, she opened the front door and froze. I made up my mind, pulled her toward me, and kissed her again. I had a wonderful evening, Jennifer. I'd like to do it again. During the week? Any evening you like. I'm a good cook, if you'd like to have dinner with me. Tell me which evening, and I'll bring something too. I'm a good cook too. She smiled. Okay, I'll cook first, and then you can cook for me, and we'll compare results. What night? Wednesday, Mark, although I'll be waiting for your usual evening call. And lots of messages. If you behave yourself, there might be a couple of surprises waiting for you in your messages. What are you doing tomorrow? Nothing. Want to go to the beach? You just want to see me in a bikini. No, I just want to have a good time. When I got home, I heard my phone beep a couple of times, but I didn't open it until I got inside and sat down on the sofa with a beer in my hand. I had a great evening, Mark. I wanted you to stay the night, but I don't want to rush things. I don't want to rush things either. When you come over on Wednesday night, bring a change of clothes. I want you to stay, but it's too soon for anything more than sleeping in the same bed, Mark. I'm tired of sleeping alone, Jennifer. Me too. I'm already in bed. It's luxurious, but it feels empty. I didn't feel that way until I met you. I'll pick you up at 9 a.m. Let's have breakfast first, then go to the beach. J. What's your favorite color? Usually blue. On women, black or red. J. Then I have the perfect bikini for you. See you in the morning, Mark. Sweet dreams, beautiful. The last message was a heart. The next morning, I stopped at her house. She honked at me. I knocked on the door and heard her calling me to come in. She smiled at me. What do you say? Do you have a broom? I'm going to have to fight off all the men. Her smile grew even wider and she disappeared, returning in a t-shirt and shorts. I took her bag, put it in the boot of my car, and drove her to a cafe by the sea for a simple but filling breakfast. By the time we were ready to sunbathe, the beach was already full. We spent the whole day at the beach going into the water a couple of times. Want to stay for a drink? I'd love to, but if I stay, I won't want to leave. She came up to me and said, Go home, get changed, come back. We'll have a drink and stay the night. I ran into the house, threw down my things, quickly packed a bag, grabbed the essentials, and hurried back to her. When I knocked on the door, out of breath, she opened it and laughed when she saw me catching my breath. She grabbed me by the shirt, pulled me inside, slammed the door, and pushed me onto the sofa. The next morning, she made me breakfast and we spent the whole day just lying around in her flat. The silence was soothing. Don't rush, Jenny, I whispered. We have all the time in the world. I knew I was already in love with her, and I felt that she felt the same way. The only problem was that I hoped it wasn't just infatuation. I had recently left my wife of 20 years and fallen in love with the first woman I saw. But I wanted to believe that fate had brought us together. We hadn't just happened to be at the supermarket that day. We didn't text each other during the day because she was busy teaching, but we talked every night. My colleagues knew I had a girlfriend now, and I told my family in Sydney that I had met someone special. My dad called and told me the news about Kylie. Apparently, she was on the verge of moving. She was still trying to find me, but no one would tell her anything. She thought I was still in Sydney and hoped she would see me again someday. Wednesday evening couldn't come soon enough. Jennifer had prepared a sumptuous dinner, delicious and filling, and the dessert she made for us made a lasting impression on me. Stroking my stomach, I said, "They often say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach." "I love you," she whispered. Turning to kiss her, I couldn't hold back a smile. "I love you too," I whispered back. "Isn't it too soon?" "Not at all, Jenny. If we feel this way about each other, then it's meant to be." I felt it on our first date over coffee. I knew I had met the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. "And I mean, if you want to be closer to your children, I'll go with you." "Are you sure? It's a big decision." "Nothing is keeping me here, Mark. My parents are still healthy. My sister is happily married. I'm not going to make a decision right now, but my heart is telling me that I should go with you. I really want to meet your children. They'll be coming for Christmas. Then you'll all come to my family's house for Christmas." That evening, she came to my flat for the first time. She called it a bit of a bachelor pad, but it was clean and tidy, although she understood why I kept it simple, as it was only temporary accommodation. When I mentioned marriage, she blushed and turned away. Taking her wrist gently, I confessed that I had been thinking about it too. "Jenny, I can't remember the last time I loved someone as much as I love Kylie. I'm not saying this because she broke my heart and cheated on me. Maybe it's because we've been on the same wavelength all these years. Maybe it's because this is something new. Maybe it's just because I'm older and have more life experience. But I'm madly in love with you, Jennifer Morris. And one day, I want to be Jennifer Williams," she whispered in response. For the next few weeks, life was blissful. We didn't spend a single night apart, although, to be honest, we spent more nights at her place than at mine because her flat was much cozier. She spoke to my father on the phone several times, and I kept the children informed, but they didn't want to talk until they met her in person. When I called my son a week before Christmas, I asked about his mother and what she was doing. "I told her I wouldn't be there for Christmas. I think she figured out you're not in Sydney. Lottie hates her, Dad. I mean, pure hatred. She's only spoken to her once since you left, and she's barely spoken to her since that call. I spoke to your sister last night. She'll be here in a couple of days." "What about Grandpa and Naomi?" "I'll talk to them when I get back to Sydney. Jenny will probably come with me. We need to find her a job and somewhere to live closer so she doesn't have to commute." "Are you sure you don't want to stay there, Dad? Lottie and I talked about it, and we both think we'll move there to be closer to you." "I know your sister is thinking about it too." Jennifer listened to me, took my hand, and squeezed it. "Are you sure, Steve? You'll be leaving all your friends and family. You're more important to me, Dad. Believe me, when Lottie arrives in a couple of days, she'll say so. And her husband will be all for it too. He hates living in Sydney." I looked at Jennifer, unable to hide my surprise. "I'll still have to go back to make sure the divorce goes through. Don't make any rash decisions, Steve. I know how it sounds, but my decision to leave your mother was planned in advance." "Oh, I know that, Dad. As far as I'm concerned, she can go to hell. She's still trying to convince people that she didn't do anything wrong and that it's your fault for leaving." Jennifer drove me to the airport on the day my daughter arrived. She brought her husband Tom with her, but as soon as Charlotte saw me, she dropped her things and ran to me. It was like those days when I picked her up from school and she was so happy to see me. She cried again for a few minutes, and by the time I introduced her to Jennifer, they were both in tears. I looked at Tom and shrugged helplessly. The next day, my son surprised me by knocking on my apartment door. "Dad," he exclaimed, and we hugged. The little rascal hugged me tightly, and we both had to wipe away tears as I let him inside to meet Jennifer. "Well, at least he looks a lot like you," she said. I knew what she meant, but I had already done a DNA test. Kylie hadn't cheated on me that early in our relationship, but I still needed to be sure. Later that morning, I drove the five of us to Jennifer's parents' house. The boot was packed with gifts, and I unloaded them all. Her mother fell in love with my daughter within 2 minutes, and I'm sure my son was accepted by them as their own grandson, just as they accepted me as their son. I called my father via an online video service so we could exchange Christmas greetings. My brother, his wife, my sister, her husband, and their children were celebrating Christmas with him. Kylie had long since left our former home and moved in with her parents. The news that surprised me was that her lover had been kicked out of his home by his wife, who used evidence to get him fired for gross misconduct. Apparently, my wife was hanging on to her job by a thread, but she was demoted and lost several mutual friends who couldn't forgive her for cheating on me. It was a wonderful day, and my children took lots of photos for their social media accounts. I had long since lost interest in such things, considering them a waste of time, but soon I began receiving messages from several old friends who had contacted my father and asked if he knew my number. Many were curious to know what had happened, and I responded simply. Others gave me information about Kylie, but I replied that it didn't matter. As soon as the 12 months were up, I would file for divorce and return to Sydney to make sure it went through. Christmas with Jennifer and her family was wonderful. When she mentioned that she would come with me to Sydney, I told her that we would stay in Adelaide and that someone from my family would join us. Her face lit up, and I almost brought her to tears when I finally gave her what I wanted to give her. Since I was technically still married, it was too early to propose, so I bought her a gorgeous necklace and bracelet. She put them on right away and whispered that she would wear them as often as she could. After a hearty lunch, her father offered me a beer, and we ended up in his garage where he wheeled out an old sports car. I haven't seen Jenny this happy in a long time, Mark. I think leaving Adelaide will do her good. But would you be happy to stay here permanently? I'll stay here for her, and my children will move here to be closer. How soon can you finalize the divorce? In a few months at the latest. I've been honest with Jenny about everything from the start. I take it she did something unpleasant to you? Yes, maybe over the course of 6 months, although I only got concrete proof in the last few weeks before I got the knife. He shook his head. Damn, I've read all that crap about cheating. Why get married if you can't keep your legs together? Ever heard of cuckolds? Judging by the look of disgust on his face, he knew exactly what I was talking about. Yes, I'm not sure that's what Kylie meant, but it's one of those new fads. It's the same with all these people who want open relationships so they can cheat and still have a clear conscience. Honestly, if my wife asked me to do something like that, I'd end up in prison. It's so disrespectful to ask someone to do that. Jenny's ex-husband cheated on her and beat her. What? He put his hand on my shoulder. She hardly knew about his cheating, but he did that to everyone who lived with her. He squeezed my shoulder. She loves you, Mark. Just don't break her heart. I'm begging you. I don't know if I can take another call like that from my little girl. He took a swig from the bottle, turned away, and added quietly, I almost destroyed her, Mark. I love her more than anything in the world, Dad. He smiled. Already calling me son. I was badly hurt myself, so we both carry wounds in our hearts and souls. We help each other. We stayed late into the evening, and my daughter drove us home because I had had too much to drink. When we got back to their flat, the children went to bed, and Jennifer pulled me into our bedroom. If everything had been okay, she would have enjoyed New Year's Eve even more. I wished the children a good time and walked her to her hotel in the city center. After dinner and drinks, I walked her back to our room, where a bottle of champagne and some snacks were waiting for us. Any New Year's resolutions? I asked. More than one. Do you want to hear them? Of course. I want you to live here with me. I agree. I want you to propose to me as soon as you get divorced. I'm already looking at rings. She pressed herself even closer to me. I want a child, she whispered. Jennifer, we'll get married and start a family. A few days later, my children left. I didn't want to let them go, but when I explained that I would most likely stay in Adelaide if they wanted to join me, they promised to think about it. I called my father and told him the same thing. He replied that I should do what was best for me, but that he was happy where he was with Naomi and would of course visit me when he could. The next few months were blissful. Eventually, I applied for an apartment and moved in with Jennifer. I won't say it was one of those fairy tale romances. After all, it was real life, but I don't remember ever being happier. We were a real team in everything we did in our lives. She knew that the specter of my divorce hung over us and still hangs over my thoughts at times. We both still had trust issues. But we agreed to always discuss any problems without giving each other reason to think we were doing something wrong. Our life was wonderful, and we never stopped seeing each other. Just enjoying her presence made me feel better. She made me want to be a better person, the perfect man in her eyes. As for Jennifer, she showed me so much love that by the time I was ready to return to Sydney, I had already bought an engagement ring. During the flight, she was more nervous than I was because she knew that the banana peel was still a possibility. My father met us at the airport with my brothers, sisters, and children. We stayed with my father while the divorce was being finalized. I had already filed the papers, but my lawyer informed me that Kylie was trying to contest the divorce. Sitting with Jennifer in his office, I was shocked that she was trying to prevent it. I haven't seen her in 12 months, I said. I followed the letter of the law. I can even prove that I've been living in Adelaide for the last year and she hasn't been living with me. What's more, we haven't been in touch at all. That's true, but she can still contest it, he replied. No judge will listen to her arguments and no one will force you into counseling. I assume Jennifer is your partner. Kylie cheated on me. That was the original reason. Now, I have a more compelling reason to divorce her. As soon as we're divorced, I'll propose to Jenny, and we'll get married as soon as possible. We plan to have children after the divorce, added Jennifer. Okay, I'll talk to her lawyer and find out what she wants. She can't really do much, but a smart lawyer will be able to fight it. 3 days later, I received a response from my lawyer. Kylie would sign the divorce agreement so it would be a joint filing, which meant that the case would be processed without delay if I agreed to talk to her one last time. I discussed this with Jennifer, who supported me no matter what decision I made. My solicitor suggested I just talk to her to sort things out. My father agreed. You're with Jennifer now, son, he said. You're getting married, starting a new family, and your children will soon be with you in Adelaide. Are you still angry with her? Not really. I've come to terms with it. I don't think so. It's her fault, and I understand why you don't want to see her, but let her have her say and then just forget about it. Okay, I'll talk to the solicitor. He'll sort it out. The following week, we were in court. My solicitor explained that as soon as the meeting was over and she signed the papers, the judge would be ready to sign our divorce, and 1 month and 1 day after the judge's decision, I would be a free man. I hadn't seen Kylie since the night she left for her date. She was waiting in the room when Jennifer and I approached my lawyer. He explained that Kylie was inside with her lawyer and no one else. Taking Jennifer by the hand, I led her and the lawyer into the room. Kylie looked up in shock when she saw me enter with another woman. Barely glancing at her, I led Jennifer to an empty chair, pulled it out as I always did, made sure she was comfortable, and sat down in the middle with my lawyer to my left. Taking Jennifer's left hand in mine, I placed our hands on the table so that everyone could see them. She pulled her chair as close to mine as possible and leaned her head against my shoulder. Finally, I looked at Kylie. To be honest, she looked terrible. I had heard often enough that Kylie's life had not been easy since I left her. I didn't feel a shred of sympathy for her. She had made a choice that cost her everything. She had cut off all contact with her daughter. Our son barely spoke to her. My entire family had severed all ties with her. And from what I heard, even her own family was disappointed, but felt they had to take her in because my father had kicked her out of the house. All right, Kylie, let's get this divorce over with. I need to start a new life, and you can stay in the past where you belong. Who is she? She asked quietly. Who? The woman next to you. That's Jennifer Morris. As soon as our divorce is finalized, I'm going to propose to her, and one day she'll be Jennifer Williams. And I will, of course, because I want to be his wife and the mother of his future children more than anything in the world. I smiled, not taking my eyes off Kylie. As soon as she says yes, we'll have a small wedding. If we're lucky, she'll be carrying our child by the time we get married. It hurt to hear all of this. I still knew my future ex-wife, and the pain in her eyes was real. You recovered very quickly, she said. It wasn't me who changed, Kylie. It was you. I remember leaving clues. You never gave me an explanation. I left that night and you didn't say a word. You didn't fight for me. I didn't have to fight for you because I was your bloody husband. So in the end, you weren't worth fighting for. You cheated on me, Kylie. You showed your true colors after 20 years together. I remember our conversations about monogamy and fidelity. I warned you that if you turned out to be like my mother, I would leave without hesitation. You only made my decision easier. Do you at least regret what you've done? Don't answer because I don't regret it. You only regret getting caught, not proving that our marriage was a sham and that you're a worthless slut just like my mother. Her lawyer cleared his throat. I stared at him. Leave if you don't like what I'm saying. She wants to talk, fine. I have a right to speak too. I made a mistake. Cheating isn't a mistake. Cheating is a series of decisions you made. I don't care if he seduced you or if you went with him on purpose. The simple fact is that you slept with him, and therefore forfeited your right to call me your husband. It was just sex. There it is. The phrase so many whores use to justify their decisions. I'm sorry, but most people equate sex with love, and considering you were my wife, you should have done that with me, not some bloody idiot you worked with. We talked about this before the wedding, Kylie. You just don't remember. I warned you again what would happen if you cheated on me. You forget that my mother cheated too. As soon as I woke up, I realized what you were doing, and all I had to do was gather the evidence. If you had refused that night, would you have left anyway? Yes, I would have left anyway. But I would have left differently. What you did that night was so damn disrespectful that you deserved everything that happened after. You took all our money. Consider it payment for 20 lost years. I paused and shook my head. No, that's not entirely fair or right. You gave me 2 children, that wasn't a waste. I also confirmed to that they're mine. That upset her. I never cheated on you back then. No, you only became a whore after that. You sold our house. No, I gave it to my father. It's still in his name, and he's renting it out. He already told me he's going to sell it and give me most of the money so I can buy another house where I live now. You didn't even give me a chance, Mark. Because you definitely didn't deserve it, Kylie. Where do you live now? None of your business. I don't want you to know that information. The day I left, you stopped mattering to me. Our children are growing up and can choose for themselves who they want to spend special days with, whether it's birthdays or holidays. She fell silent, knowing that nothing she said would change my mind. Just sign the papers and get on with your life, Jennifer said. He hasn't seen you or spoken to you in 12 months. He's come to terms with it. He loves me, and I love him. We're going to get married, have a family, and grow old together. You decided to leave him. I'm glad I was the one who caught him, hugged him, whispered that everything would be okay and that I would never let him down. My heart belongs to him, and I know his heart belongs to me. I didn't want to. She looked into my eyes and I saw tears. I kept my composure. This time the tears didn't affect me. I still love you, Mark. I'm happy for you. I don't care, Kylie, I replied coldly. His tone almost made her flinch. I don't hate you anymore. Don't let the cold tone fool you. I just don't care about you anymore. You stopped being my problem the day you let another man do that to you. We sat in silence until her lawyer finally cleared his throat. Kylie, this is clearly going nowhere, her lawyer said. Just sign the papers and get this charade over with. He's clearly moved on as he intended to remarry. No self-respecting judge would stand in your way. Your marriage is over. Your children are grown. You have no more property in common. It's over. Do the honorable thing. Sign the papers and move on. He took the papers out of the folder, placed them in front of her, and handed her a pen. Kylie met my gaze and began to cry. I knew her well enough to understand that she was genuinely upset. Wiping her cheeks, she cautiously took the pen with a trembling hand and read the documents. At the bottom, she signed them and added the date. Is my presence in court necessary? I asked my lawyer. No, Mark, you can go. You'll receive the divorce decree in the mail. All right, then we're done. Standing up, Jennifer took my hand, and I led her out of the room. I'm sorry, Mark, I heard her say. I'll always love you. I was grateful for the apology, even though it meant nothing anymore. It was too little, too late. But as for those last 3 words, I was sure she still loved me, but I didn't care. The woman I loved was holding my hand, and in a little over a month, she would be my wife. When I stepped outside, I saw my father, Naomi, Steve, and Charlotte waiting for us at a cafe. They patted me on the head, and we went to the nearest pub as I was desperate for a drink. We bought a pint each, sat down at a table, and I told them about our conversation. They cheered up when I admitted that I had probably done most of the talking, saying everything I wanted to say. How did she look? Charlotte asked. Terrible. She definitely looks her age, if not older. She definitely deserves a promotion, Jennifer whispered in my ear. Did she sign the papers? My father asked. We nodded, clinked glasses, and took a sip of beer. I went through the same thing with your mother. I'm sure everything Kylie said to you, she tried to say to me. She wasn't trying to blame me, Dad. Mom blamed you for working too much. Did she try to justify it? Stephen asked. Yes, the old song, It Was Just Sex. What is it with these promiscuous women who claim it was just sex? Charlotte wondered almost to herself. I married my husband and would never even think of leaving him just because of that. If I want something, I go to my husband and get it." She fell silent and blushed, realizing she had said this in front of her father and grandfather. We exchanged glances and burst out laughing. "Well said, girl. Well said," my father exclaimed. "And those are words to live by. Your grandfather doesn't stand a chance," Naomi declared. "And if he needs a little chemical help, he knows there are other means he can use." "Naomi, he's my grandfather," Charlotte exclaimed. "He's not dead and neither am I. I'm 65 years old and still quite capable," Naomi replied. "Your grandfather met me at the right age. But when we started living together, we promised each other we would be kind to one another. We both had failed marriages due to infidelity. I'm just glad it's almost over," I admitted. "I don't like being another divorcee, but as I said in the room, cheating is unforgivable. To be honest, you have to give credit to those who decide to stay together. Maybe if you were 10 years younger, I would feel trapped." But then I looked at my father. It was hard for him, but he always supported me. We stayed in Sydney for a few more days while I discussed my family's plans with them. Charlotte and Tom immediately agreed to come to Adelaide. Stephen was still considering his options, but he would most likely join us. To my surprise, my sister offered to come with us. I invited her to dinner when she arrived alone and found out that her marriage had also fallen apart. "You can stay with us until you sort things out," Jennifer offered. "Any family would be happy to take you in. You're my family now, and my family is yours. I'm selling the house here and we're going to use the money," I added. "Housing prices in Adelaide are much more reasonable than here, so we'll buy a big house." "With rooms for little people," suggested Jennifer, taking my hand and placing it on her stomach. "Soon I'll be carrying our first child." "How many do you want, Mark?" "As many as you want, Jenny. I love being a father." A month later, I received my divorce certificate, confirming that my marriage to Kylie Daniels, who had not kept her surname, was officially dissolved. I never heard from her again, but rumor had it that she had left Sydney within 6 months of our divorce. According to Stephen, who was the only one who stayed in touch with her, she had moved north to Queensland to start a new life. After that, I stopped asking, and Stephen stopped telling me, as I was no longer interested in what she was doing. 2 days after receiving the divorce decree, I proposed to Jennifer on the beach in front of our families. She could barely speak, just nodding as I slipped the engagement ring on her finger. 6 months later, we were married on the same beach as our new home was only a few hundred meters away. As she walked towards me in her wedding dress, no one could fail to notice her child, but my future wife was simply radiant as her father led her to me. Taking her hand, we couldn't hold back our smiles as we turned to face the priest. "My dear ones, we are gathered here today." Epilogue. I have a year left before retirement and life couldn't be better. Jennifer and I have been married for almost 20 years and are still as happy as we were on the day we met. Our first date, our first love, all those first encounters that led us to our wedding day. 6 months after returning to Adelaide from our trip to Sydney, my daughter and son were living in Adelaide. My daughter is still married to Tom and has 3 grandchildren. My son is married to a wonderful man and they have 2 adopted children. My father and Naomi moved to Adelaide to live with us a year after the divorce, where he lived for almost 10 years before passing away peacefully in his sleep. Naomi was devastated, and the first thing we did was insist that she live with us. She resisted for a while until she realized that our house was huge, and in the end, we built a separate apartment for her so that she could maintain her independence. My sister moved to Adelaide with her children almost immediately after her husband left her. Like her brother, she had been the victim of infidelity, and he did not resist when she took the children. We found her a place to live after she had been staying with us for a couple of months. She eventually married one of my colleagues and a good friend, and they have been happily married for 15 years. My brother stayed in Sydney and was the only one who kept in touch with our mother. At the age of 60, I learned that she had died. Having had no relationship with her for almost 40 years, I felt no sadness upon hearing of her death. Jennifer suggested that I attend the funeral. Again, it was to make her feel better, and we all flew to Sydney to attend the funeral. I was surprised to learn that she had remarried and had practically adopted her husband's children as her own. They were not shocked to learn of our existence, but they were surprised that she had not admitted that she had completely distanced herself from 2 of her 3 children. We could have explained why we had distanced ourselves, but a funeral is not the time for that. We simply said that we had come to say goodbye to her before returning home. Since there were no relatives left in Sydney, My brother moved to Adelaide to live with us a year later. As for Jennifer and me, we had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. My eldest daughter and son were thrilled to have siblings and enjoyed looking after the younger ones, even though Jennifer and I didn't go out much. But we still loved each other deeply, always appreciated each other's company, never went to bed angry, and our life today is as vibrant as it was on the day we first slept together. I look back on my life in the period when I was divorced. I'm sure there are people who would have preferred that I give in to my ex-wife, but what would have been the point? The fact that I left without saying a word actually hurt her much more, and I remained silent for a year until I returned to make sure the divorce was final. She knew how I felt about fidelity and broke our agreement. As for those who believe in reconciliation, I cannot agree with them either. If your wife cheats on you and you find it in yourself to forgive her, that is your business. But trust has been broken, and can it ever be fully restored? I don't believe so. You will spend the rest of your life in suspicion and resentment, and in the end, divorce will probably be inevitable. Instead, I took a path that is not often taken. There was no real revenge, at least not to the extent of burning everything to the ground, but there was no chance of reconciliation either. I just walked away and decided to move on without Kylie. I found Jennifer, my one true soulmate. I still believe that our meeting in the supermarket was fate. I'm not religious, but I'm sure there are gods of fate in the old religions. Are you ready, Mark? I turned around and saw my wife, who looked simply gorgeous in a luxurious red ball gown. I see you still have your old magic. Any news about the kids? They're already on their way or about to leave. And the little ones? They'll be fine without us for one night. Unless they burn the house down. Then we'll have time to have some fun? Of course. I love you, husband. I love you, wife. Many more years of happiness? I hope so. I'll tell the kids we won't be long. They'll understand. And thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for updates.